Hey everyone, thanks for joining. Got a new face this week. Got Shawn joining us. We're gonna do a little tech dive, about the company. But first, figured we kick it off with a little get to know Shawn. He is the CTO of GoldSpot. So first things first, Shawn, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Well, awesome. I'd like to start. I know we did a deep dive into Dennis's background, but I'd love to, maybe we kick it off some things you were doing before GoldSpot, and we'll lead that into kind of how you got involved, and then we'll do a little overview of the company.
All right. Well, I mean, I'm a Canadian kind of junior explorer, I suppose. Originally, I got my start about around 2004, 2005, working overseas in Mongolia near the Oyu deposit. And at that time, kind of fresh in undergrad, not really knowing what the whole scene is about, it absolutely changed my life. And ever since then, I've been just crazy for exploration, generally speaking. So I guess following that path, I worked a few jobs in Canada, during the summers, as Canadians often do. But around the end of my undergrad career, most of my fellows went off to industry because of the bull market. And instead I went and did a master's at MDRU, which was a really good choice because later that year, there was a huge market crash. And since then, sort of developing a bit of a love of the academic side of economic geology, but also really wanting to figure out ways to apply that in industry. So after I finished master's, I went overseas to Australia, and I worked for about 5 years in the Yilgarn looking for gold, and that was with Goldfields. And in Australia, it was a really great chance to have a beautiful overview of different mining and exploration situations. The St. Ives gold mine is in Kambalda. It's in deep out in the regions, and often companies like Goldfields will have open pits running, underground, regional exploration, all happening at the same time. So it's a good chance to get around and, bite into things like resource estimation. And then, a month later, you're out supervising drill rigs, taking samples, knee deep in salt water on some salt lake someplace, and a great opportunity to make a lot of friends and get to know, another geological jurisdiction.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Hey, that's a pretty incredible background. So you get your master's, awesome. You get your feet wet, or your ankles, knees wet, I guess, in some cases. And then so tell me, how do you find I guess this love for now more of the tech? Where you how do you get involved? And maybe if I'm putting words in your mouth, let me know. But was it you're seeing some opportunities, or how outdated some things were, and you're like, there must be a better way? Or walk me through kind of the passion and how you kind of get involved with the GoldSpot.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was definitely, I can almost remember the day. I was working across 3 underground mines, chatting with my cross chef, who is another project geologist, about some of the problems we were having. And the two of us are sort of talking about there must be some more ways we can integrate these data, or maybe we can look at geochemical information, geophysical information. I mean, something more than just sort of mine forward and see how the grades look. And around that time, Goldfields was having Jackie Coombs, who's a well-known resource geologist in Australia, provide mentorship across the business for people to learn how to estimate the value of a mineral deposit. And she was so supportive of kind of outside the box thinking, and really encouraging us all to think about different ways to look at geological situations and do good geology, but also bring some kind of math and science to the table. She encouraged me to start looking into this weird out there thing, machine learning, and the various tools that come along with it. So that would have been probably around 2014 or 2015. And eventually, it became apparent that in the mining environment in a big company, they're not necessarily geared to support big changes in innovation. It's much more efficient for those big companies to kind of move slowly and carefully, because a bad decision could be a bad upset to the business case. So instead, they were very supportive for me to leave and pursue a PhD, which I did at the Center of Ore Deposit and Earth Sciences codes at the University of Tasmania. And I was very lucky to work with two geophysicists there and learn, you know, applied machine learning for exploration in geosciences.
Okay. No, interesting. Okay. Wow, the stories get better and better. So now walk me through. So, you know, hey, that's hilarious. You're talking to your crush, like you say, you know, you bounce some ideas off of, you know, fuels this kind of insight. So now, you know, you've got your PhD. Walk me through then how kind of everything gets started, and talk to me about that process.
Sure, sure. So I guess the question I had for myself when I was leaving the PhD, or sort of like I could see the end in sight, I was working as a consultant, sort of moonlighting, earning a bit of pocket money here and there as I was going. And I thought, okay, so there's a way to make a life, you know, applying these techniques to exploration projects, or, you know, maybe coming in for a week or two here and there with larger companies. But, you know, is that the best strategy? You know, like, what's the future look like for this emerging, you know, new technique? And I really quickly realized that there was only a few people around the world, a few groups really thinking about this seriously. And one of those was GoldSpot. So having known a few of the people who started GoldSpot when they placed in the Disrupt Exploration Challenge, I called them up and I said, like, you know, I'm really excited in what you're doing. I'm really interested. And it was a lucky situation for me that they were willing to take a shot on this guy who was living overseas and welcome me with open arms. And my wife still brings this up. I mean, I finished my PhD. I handed it in the evening of day, it was a Tuesday, and then I got on the airplane and I started working on my first GoldSpot project. And I worked on that for the flight coming over to Canada. And it's been kind of nonstop ever since. And the team is just growing, and there are all these like-minded people starting to come in and take big bites out of these projects in a way that I just find so stimulating.
Yeah. No, awesome. Well, here, you know, kind of the next step, and what a story of how we get involved, and, you know, awesome. You know, talk me through, you know, obviously discoveries in the name, but I'm gonna ask you, you know, give me called the 20-floor elevator pitch. You know, you get on the hotel elevator on the 20th floor. You know, what is GoldSpot? And you know, for people who have never heard of the company, do you want to kind of outline what you guys do a little bit as well going forward?
Sure, yeah. I mean, GoldSpot is an interesting beast because it's quite different to what most people expect from the sector. It's innovative, it's really dynamic, and it also starts with geoscience rather than, you know, having invented some machine and trying to apply that to everything under the sun. I'd say fundamentally, GoldSpot's a technology company that's working backwards from what do you need to succeed in exploration. And that could be in a mining environment where you need to add ounces by, you know, targeted mine extension drilling. It could be that you're a junior company with a huge land package and you don't really even know where to start. And you need to start creating a focus to spend money and effort in order to succeed in this large region. So that's a very general way to say what we're doing is we're developing technology and computational approaches and ways of thinking and techniques and workflows so that we can quickly take a exploration situation, greenfields, brownfields, whatever metal, and then we work backwards on the tools required to succeed most efficiently.
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw an example at you guys, and I actually took this from online. So it's someone else's kind of guesstimate example, but I'd love to throw something at you. You know, let's say you know, someone in northern British Columbia, you know, has a piece of land, and, you know, again, it's in a good area, let's say, but they've got no drill holes on it. They know nothing other than we own this land. How does a company like GoldSpot help them kind of move forward? And let's say they've raised money for drilling and they just don't know where to start. You know, how do you help them?
Yeah, there's an old saying, I've heard it all over the world, that there's a mine in the data, you know, in historic data. The governments in Canada are not quite as up to scratch as other countries in the world in terms of having pre-competitive data available, but there's still an absolute ton. So one way to begin in a situation like you're describing is to just sit down and start to aggregate all that information into one spot. Usually there are websites over here that have scanned PDFs. There are websites over there that have, you know, maybe table data of geochemical information or old prospector samples, but nobody in the government has a reason necessarily to sit down and really aggregate that into something that you can do anything with. And that's one of the most fundamental things GoldSpot does, whether it's in a situation where you're sourcing data from the government, or if it's just an older operation that's been producing data over here, data over there, some on paper, some in the computer, some forgotten in the file cabinet. It's about bringing it together, organizing it, and then having it into one geological model. Now, if you're not a geologist, you're going to just start sticking data in. That's unreasonable. I mean, it would be like, you know, finding a postage stamp on the floor and you're trying to insinuate how the mail system works. It doesn't, those things are not related. And so when you're bringing all this data together, one of the more or most important things is to look at it with your geologist eyes, whether you're a geochemist, a geophysicist, you know, whether you're somebody who's worked underground, on surface, whatever your familiarity is, it's going to bring some insight and influence the flavor of what you do with that data.
Cool. No, interesting. So walk me through. So keep going. So you've got let's say, all right, you've put together some data. Then is it, you know, okay, well, based on the data, we can assume that maybe on your property, there's this over here, this over there, this over here. You know, just walk me through kind of the example. I'd love to hear more.
Yeah, geology and exploration is such a big theme, and it's so varied, and there are so many different aspects to think about that it can sometimes be almost a little bit overwhelming to try to capture that in a simple analogy. The issue can often be broken into, you know, are you targeting a big region on a map, or are you targeting in sort of 3D in an area where there's enough data? So from your example, it's more of it's like a big picture map scale. In places like Canada and British Columbia, we have data that's available from, for example, like Quest BC. They fly amazing surveys. They collect electromagnetic data, they collect magnetics, they collect gravity, they compile geochemical information, they do maps. I mean, this is amazing fundamental work that is the very bones of an exploration project. And they post it all up online, and you know, maybe you look at one layer and you say, I see copper over here, I'll go over there. But that is not the most full picture of what that data contains. And maybe it shows you the obvious spots. So what we do at GoldSpot is we're using techniques where we start to layer the data up. Now, most geologists are familiar with doing this on something like a light table. I mean, you print off a big piece of paper of one layer of information, you put another one on top of it. After you've placed maybe 3-4 layers of information on top of one another, it starts to get a little bit muddled. People try other things. You know, maybe they take 3 kinds of information and they make a colored image where the different, you know, whether you go from red to blue to green signifies strong signals in those 3 things you've combined. Again, you know, really useful, super conventional. What machine learning brings to the table is the ability to do that with as many data layers as you have or are reasonable to include. So we're really talking about taking something that is pretty conventional, layering information of different types and trying to interpret it as an expert. But instead of just 3 layers, 100, 50, it depends on the situation. But machine learning has the power, the statistical power of teasing out signals that are not clear to the untrained eye or even the trained eye, because they don't rely on the conventional kinds of algebra and statistics that we're familiar with from high school. So we're talking about big, complicated, non-parametric, robust statistical approaches. And that's really all machine learning is. And one of my main purposes, I guess, as CTO at GoldSpot is trying to claw away some of the mystique around these techniques and explain to people, we're not talking about a magic bullet by any means. We're not trying to befuddle anyone. You know, we don't, in fact, the opposite. We want to actually make these things not sexy at all. Because otherwise people won't want to use them. You need to have a comfort with the technology that you're using. So once it's explained that what you're really doing is looking at a huge, big plot of information in a dimensionality you can't visualize as a person, and then you're having the computer automatically pick patterns out of that that are relevant for finding a mineral deposit, okay, that seems logical. That's something that people will want.
Yeah. No, so here to go even deeper, or you know, a little bit off to the side, and amazing, you know, thank you for you compared to the light table, you know, layering pieces of paper on top. So fantastic. You know, curious on how you work with companies then, and I know this could probably be its own video by itself, but maybe just a teaser on, do you guys find companies, or do you guys identify who owns this piece of land they'd be interesting to work with? We can help them find something. Or is it the opposite? People come to you and they say, hey, we've got this. We'd love for you to help us pick some drill targets. You know, how do you typically work with clients?
Yeah, most commonly what we do is people approach us. So they know about us through word of mouth. You know, often people maybe even have worked at one company that's engaged us and they go off to another company saying, you know, this worked really well for us. So we're keen to try this again. As well, you know, the younger generation of geologists are coming out of school and they're really aware of these technologies and they're not seeing them being used around them in the older mentors that they have or the management. So people will reach out to us and they'll say, all right, we've got a block of land. We've got this crazy sock drawer of data and information. What next? And part of the strategy for us is really just to sit down with them collaboratively, look through that drawer of information and start to unpick, okay, this is useful, this is probably not. This has good data coverage over your area, but this one is too sparse, it's not going to help you. Often we even suggest other data that can be collected, and that could be done independently to the exercise, or we can, you know, work alongside those people to help direct the best strategy for data collection. But ultimately, I'd say, yeah, we're in the business of really pitching in and often coming in as almost like a bolt-on entity to a group that may not have the skills or even just the manpower to get something done that they understand, but they just don't have time to do. And I think that's one of the most rewarding things I see about working at GoldSpot is that in most or many conventional consultant groups, you sort of try to advertise your, you know, your one trick, then you go around, you do your structural analysis, you do the report, you hand it in, and then you're out of there. And often companies say they don't want to be on site for more than 1 week, and that's it. 1 week on site, a couple of days to write the report, and then you're gone. This is not the GoldSpot model at all. The GoldSpot situation is much more of becoming a part of the team, being around and in the mix for 6 months to 2 years, and just helping. Yeah. So that you really start to know the project, you know the different data that's available, you're working as a team on the GoldSpot side alongside the actual client. It's really great.
Yeah. No, honestly, you did a fantastic job going over this, by the way. I'd like to thank you. And I know anyone who's made it this far, and invite you to guys to ask some questions, you know, definitely do some more videos, but extremely interesting. I know a lot of people look at, you know, the mining industry and they go, wow, it's so dated. You know, how can we use tech like this? So it's fantastic that, you know, you guys are doing something pretty cool. And, you know, we're definitely going to do more videos. I think this is amazing kind of overview, and thanks so much for joining, Shawn. Unfortunately for you, you're going to have to come back, but you know, thank you so much for joining. I think this was great. Is there anything else kind of about GoldSpot on a general level you wanted to get out there? And you know, of course, we'll be doing some other videos too.
I do have an axe to grind. I'm glad you asked. The one thing that people bring up to me all the time when I'm having a beer, or when I used to go and have beer when that was a thing, you know, they always said, oh, you know, I really like the approaches you use, but, you know, I don't work in gold. And it's too bad that in a way we're called GoldSpot, because what I'm describing here is not unique to looking for gold. And in fact, I think we're working right now on projects for undersea nodule mining, base metals in Australia, gold in Scandinavia. I mean, everything you can imagine. So the one thing I am always joking with people about is, make sure people know it's not just gold, because I like other things on the periodic table. So I want to see more of those coming in.
Yeah, no, fair. So a little shout out to, whether you're looking for some battery metals, copper, you name it. Hey, GoldSpot is here to help. But no, Shawn, thanks so much for joining. This was an awesome video. Like I said, you're definitely going to have to join for some more. So thank you so much. And, anyone who made it this far, please let us know if you've got questions.